Hey up, from Row Racing DP here, and I'm doing a bit of live streaming just for the fun of it. I was planning on doing it a fair few hours ago, but my little brother came round, so I've come on about 6 hours later than I was planning. But anyway, what we're going to do today, well, we're just going to have a bit of fun, hence the title of the live stream, Project Cars Multi-Class Mayhem. Now I can kind of blame this on Scott, one of my viewers, because he got me to do a multi-class race a couple of days ago, and it was quite enjoyable. So I figured, well, let's go and have another blast. Now the last time I did do a live stream, I wasn't driving particularly well. I wasn't feeling too great. I was tired. I hadn't driven for a few days. So hopefully we're going to do a bit better here. Now, admittedly, I have done a little bit of work on setups on a couple of cars. The Sierra Cosworth I was driving a day or so ago, it wasn't handling particularly nicely, and what I've actually done, the Jack Spade settings, the 66% settings that I put on all the cars, on the Sierra Cosworth I actually took it off and put the classic settings on to see what they were like, and it did actually handle a lot nicer. So I found that quite interesting. I still had to do quite a bit of work on setup though. Now for this particular video, what I'm going to do is I'm going in at the LMP1, the RWD LMP1, and I'm in a multi-class race, so I'm up against LMP1s, LMP2s, LMP3s around the Nordschleife. Although I have just realised I've left it on 6 laps, and I don't want to do 6 laps, I want to knock it down to 3. So well done, Dave, you're already going to have to restart something. So I am going to jump back out. I got a bit ahead of myself there. Proof that I am human, I'm not a robot. So yeah, LMP1 around Nordschleife. I'm going to do 3, maybe 4 laps. But what I'm doing is I'm putting a half-hour qualifying session on. However, I'm not going to take part in qualifying. Instead, I'm going to skip to the end of the session and start from the back of the grid. Now, I've put it on a half-hour qualifying session so that the AI cars get plenty of time to go and do a couple of laps, in the hope that the LMP1s are up in front and the LMP2s and 3s are behind them. So I'll put it on 4 laps. That'll do for me. So yeah, got the half-hour quali session excuse me, so the AI cars can get some laps in. Then I'm going to start from the back and see how we get on. Now obviously I have titled it Multi-Class Mayhem, which means there's a fairly good chance that we are going to see lots of crashes. Now if that is the case, then so be it. As long as they're not silly crashes that are just my own fault. I mean, I have done a couple of practice runs on this, and I did try it where with no qualifying session and me at the back of the grid. But the problem was there was a lot of LMP1s at the back of the grid, and they just wouldn't go for an overtake on the LMP3s or the LMP2s. So they were banging their brakes on quite fast parts of the circuit, which obviously meant I was ramming the back of them, which is not surprising given that you don't expect them to brake on a straight. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a few different types of cars. We've got open wheel LMP2s, plenty of cars in the pit lane there, fair few LMP1s. Now I'm not going to watch all of the qualifying session. I'm not really going to watch much of the qualifying session at all. I just wanted to show you that there is a few cars out there. Now the Nordschleife is an extremely tricky track to overtake on, although the speed difference should make it possible at least. I mean, there are a few places where you can go for overtakes as long as you know what the AI is going to do, and obviously as well there is the big long straight, but I'm hoping that by the time we get to that point we will have overtaken a fair few cars anyway, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, with it being a multi-class, I would hope that the LMP1s will qualify up in front to not hold up the LMP2s or 3s. But we'll have to wait and see how we get on with that one. Now, in the little bit of a practice run I did, I found that some of the LMP2s and LMP3s are not very quick on the straights, but bloody hell, they were aggressive through the corners. So if you do overtake them, they don't mind having a go back. There was even one point where I was behind an LMP1 car who was also behind an LMP1 car that had an LMP3 car ahead of it. Well, the first one got ahead, so the LMP3 dived for a move on the next corner, got it completely wrong, cut the next corner, rammed the second LMP1 car off the track, and I'm following, watching, thinking, okay, I'm going to have to watch out what I do here. I mean, we can see on the screen now, that's the kind of situation that we could end up facing. You've got 3 LMP1 cars all stuck behind an LMP3 car. Now 2 more LMP1s are getting in the mix as well, and they for some reason don't really like going for an overtake. Now it is a bit difficult around here, admittedly, but in the lower class cars they do seem a little more willing to chuck it up the inside and let the LMPs fight around them. It's quite amusing actually. We'll watch this for a second, see what happens. The problem is when you get in this kind of situation, if you're the car stuck behind the slow car, then it's tricky to overtake, but all of the cars behind are thinking, okay, let's get past. But if you're near the back of the train, it's difficult to see the first car hit the brakes, and the chain effect, all of a sudden all you see is brake lights. I mean, we can see the traffic jam is building. We've now even got an LMP2 car getting into the mix at the back. So this is the kind of stuff that I could potentially come up against in the race, but like I say, with having a half-hour qualifying session on, it should give the AI cars half a chance of getting past and putting a lap time in. I mean, all of these LMP1s, when they get to a straight, should be able to breeze past, but it's a long way to get to the straight. I mean, like I say, in one of the practices I did it without qualifying, and the cars were going so slow, it was unbelievable. I wouldn't say it was impossible to drive, but I was either hitting the back of them or having to go so slow that all of the cars behind me thought, I'll go past, and then they'd hit all the cars ahead of me, and then I'd have nowhere to go. We've definitely got a big traffic jam going on here now. That's quite amusing. They're all joining in. Now I've got a grid of 31 cars, and at the moment there's about 15 of them here. Now, considering it's such a big track, you'd think they'd all give themselves a little bit of room. Now, a few of these LMP1s that have managed to break away are probably going to get a decent lap time in. Any that stay stuck behind, oh, he's chucked it up the inside! That's not going to work too well. Yeah, but the LMPs that are stuck in the traffic here, they're not going to get a good lap in at the start. And when they get on the straight, yeah, okay, they can get ahead. But after that, it would be interesting to see what times we get. And I am tempted to just sit here and watch all this and see what carnage ensues, but I'm not actually going to be live streaming for too long. 7 o'clock UK time is my limit, as I've got an F1 race I'm going to go and do. So I do want to go and get on track at some point, but I am enjoying this this little qualifying battle. I mean, you can see there the LMP3 car, okay, a few cars have got ahead of him, but there he is, he's still there, and he's not making it easy for the cars behind him to get past. There's just more and more cars joining this particular traffic jam now. So this race could definitely get very, very interesting. I mean, if I had have left it without a qualifying session on, then it really, really would be more than mayhem. You see, you can tell he's getting impatient now. So anyway, right, let's see, these LMPs have managed to break away. So let's go and we've got an LMP3 currently in first, but that's because no one has set a time yet. But him all on his own, he's probably going to get a decent lap time in compared to all the others, so he may find that he's ahead of a few LMP1s. Go on, fella. Patrick Rothar. We'll keep an eye out for where he actually qualifies. Right, let's skip to the end of the session then, and let's go and have a race. Let's go and see where that fella did actually qualify. So we've got an LMP1 on pole, then we've got an LMP2 in second place. He's going to hold up every single one of these LMP1s. Then we're into the LMP2s again. There's another LMP1 in there. And then the LMP3s. Patrick Rothar. Didn't do too great overall in the end. But there we go. Right, okay, so let's go and get involved in what could potentially be absolute bloody carnage. Now, I am going to go for it from the start. Usually when I start at the back, I would wait and let the cars drive off. But I'm not going to do that. But what it does mean is I'm going to have to be very careful, because these LMP3s aren't very quick. And as I mentioned, they are very feisty and like parking it in the middle of a corner. And when you're in a car that's much, much faster, it does mean you have to drive so much slower than the car's capable of. Go on, move over. Oi, I've even been rammed. And he's chucking it up the inside. I told you, these guys are feisty. Oh, cheers, fella. I don't mind you shunting me off. Come on, speed up. Put your foot down. One slight advantage of that slow start there is it has spread out the initial field a little bit, but I'm still going to have to be careful because they are going to break earlier than I would want to. A little twitchy on the brakes then. Now hopefully that LMP2 car that qualified in second place will hold up a little bit of the field for us. But what I don't want to happen is to get into lots and lots of traffic. Now that actually looks like an LMP1 car there. I doubt very much it is. Now obviously when you're in this amount of traffic, you're not going to be able to drive anywhere near as fast as you know you can, or you know your car's capable of, simply because of the slower cars around you. Which does make it tricky, because if you've got used to driving a car very fast, if you then got to drive it slow, it completely kind of alters your braking points, your accelerating points, how much you steer. Don't turn in on me. Oh, he's behind me. Okay. Oh, I think I nudged the car that I'd just overtaken. Got away with it though. You see now, there's a corner. Would not usually slow down for, but because he was on the brakes, I had no choice. And the problem is when you're going slower into a corner, there's a good chance the computer could just dive bomb you. Oh, too fast in. I do not want to be up the top here. I know a lot of people think it is better to go around the top, but it's not faster. Ooh, sorry fella, go on, go, go, go. Ah, it's got me right out of turbo. He's going to go very, very slow here. Oh, slower than I was expecting. Well, he is still doing 70. I was going to chuck it up the inside then, decided against it though. Doesn't take long to realise the AI will just turn in on you. And he's also going to go slow on the exit here.
Box, box, box.
Right, let's see if we can make up a few places down here. We should completely overspeed the LMP2s and 3s. That's an LMP1 going rather slow there. Oh, I don't really want to catch him up at this corner. We're going for it. Locked it up a bit there. Decided against that move there. It's very easy to run out of road, very fast on that corner. This could get tricky if he turns in. Ah, I left the door wide open. Oh, and he went to shut it, but I was still kind of there. Don't really want to get hard on the brakes on the exit of a corner. So difficult to judge the speed difference from the different classes. Okay, we've got a bit of a traffic jam ahead. Oh, focusing too much on the cars ahead instead of where I was going. Okay, carrying a lot more speed. Can we do anything up here? Nope. He was brave there, he's made it work though. I was way too slow through the corkscrew then. Just had a strange bit of lag then.
Pit in at the end of this lap. Box, box, box.
Don't really want to be on the brakes there, fella. But I can understand why if the car ahead's a bit slow. Ooh, thought I was hitting him then. Come on, get back in that turbo.
Great job out there, great move.
Okay, got a little bit of a breather from cars for a moment until they attack me into these last corners. Now we're being held up in the traffic for as long as I was. There's a good chance we won't catch any of the other LMP1s, but we can try. Now I can hear cars, but I don't know if that's the cars that are behind me or the cars that are ahead. If it was the cars that are ahead, they're not that far away. Oh, there they are. Saw a flash of brake lights, which would suggest there might be a slow one in the middle of them. Tried taking that in second on entry, and every time it spits me out. I do usually take it in first, but I am continuously trying to take it in second just to get more speed, but it's not quite working yet. Oh, he's turned in on me. Yes, sod. Didn't work for you though, did it?
Enter this lap, box, box, box.
Sneaky sod. I had to be off throttle because of the car ahead, and he goes breezing by. But that's exactly what they should do. Okay, so this lap then to try and catch any more cars. Ooh, a bit too twitchy there. Get off that curb, come on. Oh, that's not a good mistake to make. I actually thought for a moment I was at a different corner.
At the end of this lap, please.
Well, it doesn't look like I'm going to catch the 6 cars ahead of me, but that's not surprising considering that they are LMP1 cars and they did start the race up at the front. So I had no problems with traffic. or anything like that. But there you go. And so far, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen at the last corner yet, but so far I've actually quite enjoyed this race. Then I do like the LMP1s, I do like the NORDSCHLIEFE. Whew. And there we go. And for the guy that said the other day that I can't drive, well, stick that drive up your pipe and smoke it. But, anyway, I enjoyed that. How far? 24:41. Bloody hell, so I was just over a minute behind them. That's how much time starting at the back cost me with all the traffic. But there we go. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a slight break for the moment, and we're going to quickly watch a bit of the replay. I may watch all of the replay, it depends. Depends on how enjoyable it is. Well, not a particularly good start to the race there. Oh my god, and that's why I ended up hitting the back of them. There was a right car park. Now, started 31st, where you can pretty much give away a second for each position to the leader. So there's 31 seconds of the gap I missed out on at the end. I mean, I do like the replays of this game. I don't like that bit of driving though. I do like the replays on this game. The replays do look very, very good. You do see some interesting things on them. But it is a shame that you can't skip from car to car on the replays. But, I mean, the replays are good enough to give you an idea of what you did right, what you perhaps did wrong, why certain things happened. I mean, I've done it where... even around this track in other cars, I'll spin out for what I think is no apparent reason. I'll watch a replay and then realise, oh okay, I dipped a wheel on the grass, or in the braking zone at the point I did a downshift I've lost the rear end of the car. So you know, okay, I can brake at the same point, but I've got to either downshift slower or just wait longer in the braking zone to actually go down the gears. Hopefully though we'll see some nice overtakes. And why that says I'm in neutral, I don't know, because I'm not in neutral. So there's one bug I've found on a replay. Oh, and a couple of glitches there as well, and a bit of contact. But rubbing is racing in motorsport, although in the Le Mans cars a little bit of contact can cost you a lot. I did say at the start as well, these LMP2s and 3s are very aggressive in the corners, and they really don't mind just turning in on you, or if you do get past, just chucking it back up the inside if they've got half a chance, or even if they've got no chance, they'll still go for it. And one of the differences I like to think of between decent human racers and the AIs is, I mean, in league races you get to know the people you're racing against, you get to know the kind of things that they do, you get to know who gives you a bit of room or not. And one of the things I like to do is, if I'm being attacked into a corner, I don't really see the point in being too over defensive, because if you go defensive it costs you time. If you go defensive there's chance of collision. But if you actually say, okay, take the corner, you can get a better line on the exit and re-overtake them. And there's nothing worse than overtaking someone into a corner and them just driving straight past you with ease on the exit of it. Oh, I did give him a nudge though, and him a nudge, but they didn't give me much room, so You've got to get your elbows out a little bit. If it had a more open track, dealing with the speed difference would be a lot easier between these classes, but on such a tight, twisty circuit, it was very, very difficult, because you just don't know when they're going to brake, how much they're going to brake, or if they're going to lose it on the way to the carousel. I didn't see that when I was actually doing the race. That's because I focused on myself losing it up onto the top. Oh, see there, his braking point obviously very, very different to mine, totally caught me out. I can see I'm going to be coming up with a lot of excuses through this replay. The replays definitely do show up moments of bad driving. But then, like, they're trying to be cautious, braking early and going slow, still giving him a bit of a nudge. So easily done. Thought about chucking up the inside, think better of it. Hopefully we'll wait for a slightly better place to go for the move. See, it's tempting there, but given that hill, if you go too aggressive over that hill, get a bit too airborne, and you lose it on the landing. A much better place to overtake. Now I will admit that's actually the first race that I've done on the driver's side cockpit view. Usually in these LMPs I'll use the passenger seat view. It's not quite this view, it's a little more central. It does give you a better view of what's going on ahead and around you, but I figured, you know what, we'll go with the cockpit view. It is quite enjoyable. It doesn't take too long to get used to the cockpit views. Some obviously are a little more difficult than others. The open wheelers, I love doing cockpit view in those. I mean, you can see plenty anyway, but it just adds much more realism to it. I mean, personally, I do seem to lose a little bit of speed going into cockpit view, but that's just because of something not necessarily used to. Now, if people are watching and do want to send messages, they can do. I have got my iPad next to me, although while I'm driving I will tend not to read the messages because I do crash. I tend to get to the messages once I've finished driving, so if you do want to message me, feel free to do so, whether it be for wanting to see a particular car on track or see a certain track, or even if you have a difficulty with a car on a track. I don't mind going and jumping into the car and seeing if I can help with that, unless I'm actually setting myself an accomplishment, something that I'm working on, something I want to do. But usually I will get around to it eventually. I mean, I've only been doing Twitch for about 4 weeks now, and a few of the things I have found out about Project Cars has been very helpful to a few people, even myself. I got a little bit close there, but that's a bit of road that you can get brave on. But he got even braver into the right hand. That's where he... I remember I left the door open, then he tried to close it, but I was already sort of there, doing to him what he just did to me. Out of all of the cars on the game, these LMP1s are my preferred car to drive. Nice and fast, plenty of grip, enjoyable to drive. Well, I don't really get on with a lot of the road cars, though I don't mind driving them. The touring cars, they're quite fun. The GT cars sound very, very nice. The open wheelers, the Formula Gulfs are fun. The Formula Rookies are alright. Formula Cs are great fun. The Formula Bs are also good fun with an interesting CARS system. When you press the button, it deploys all of your CARS, so you do have to be careful as to where you use it. And then there's the Formula A's, which really I'm not a big fan of. I mean, if you're watching this and you've seen me drive before talking about the cars, you'll know I'm not a big fan of them, which for me is very frustrating because I am a big F1 fan. Played Codemasters F1 games for quite some time, so coming onto this, driving the Formula A's and finding them not that much fun to drive is a little frustrating. I mean, yes, they're quick, but they just don't feel like they've got any grip whatsoever. And I mean, so far they're sort of the car that is going to need the most work on setup for myself, just to make them sort of drivable, let alone raceable. From the races I've done in them so far, they're so unpredictable in the braking zones and on the downshifts, that it then makes you fear getting on the brakes, which then means you miss the corners. And when it comes to accelerating out of the corners, you do again have to be so cautious that in the end you're just losing time on entry and exit of corners. And at the end of the day, that's where F1 cars are meant to be, faster than anything else. Now, I do know that working on setup can improve both of those, but it's having that time to spend on a track, or should I say on each track, working on the setup. I mean, I can easily spend 3 or 4 hours just playing about with setups, getting a car to handle half decent. And if I was doing a league race on Project Cars in the Formula A's, I would probably spend even longer than that. I mean, in the Front Row Racing F1 League on F1 2014 last season, there was a lot of discussions about controllers, the advantages and disadvantages they had compared to wheels. The controllers had traction control even when it was turned off, but they did have lazier steering. The wheels had traction control completely turned off, but did have better steering. Now, the lack of traction as a wheel user you could work around it with setup, but it meant going higher aerodynamics. When you're up against a pad user that can go very aggressive on an exit of corners with lower aeros, it puts you in a very difficult situation. So we ended up in the situation of a couple of us wheel users in the league started to get very, very fast, and a few of the pad users could not quite grasp it. They were saying, well, if the controllers are so much better, how come you're faster? How come you're winning races? And I kept saying to them, it's down to practice. It's down to spending a lot of time working on setup, then braking points, turn-in points, throttle points, absolutely everything, strategy, fuel management through the race, brake management through the race. And they couldn't quite believe me. So one week I gave them the statistics of my practice sessions. For example, we raced on a Wednesday night, I started practice on the Sunday night. I did about 4 hours, and it worked out that I'd done about 150 laps in those 4 hours. And I had tested something like 15 different connotations of setup. The next night I did another 4 hours doing a similar amount of laps, but this time with less changes of setup. So in Sunday and Monday I'd done about 8 or 9 hours and about 300 laps. So Tuesday, day before the race, I must have spent about 5-6 hours practicing. I'd got my setup nailed down to what I was going to do, so those last 5-6 hours was all about racing line, braking points, turning points, what strategies are best, which fuel mode is best for each corner, which brake setting is best for each corner. So it worked out that I did about another 300 laps on the Tuesday. So I'd done nearly 600-700 laps to do a 30 lap race. Now when those stats came out, it was sort of like, really? Okay. And then people could perhaps understand a little bit that it's not just practice that helps, it's the amount of practice you do and what you do within that practice. If you're constantly changing your setup all the way up to race day, you're not going to go as fast as if you land on a setup on day one and then spend the next 2 days just doing laps. But there we go. I mean, it's been quite interesting as well, where, I mean, we're still doing a few races on F1 2014. Our league season finished, excuse me, but we've still been doing race days in the week. And one of the drivers was a pad user last year, won a few races, should have won many more. I mean, in a way, his strategy really hurt him at times, because he was going for one-stop strategies when 2 stops were 15, 20, 25 seconds faster. But again, that comes down to practice. So yeah, he was a pad user. And then towards the end of the season, he bought himself a wheel and found it very difficult to use. Couldn't quite understand why he'd suddenly gone from being like potential race winner to coming like potentially last. And that's what I was saying, it's the experience. I mean, I myself, I've had 4 or 5 years of driving on wheels on consoles, so I've got 4 or 5 years experience over someone that's brand new to a wheel. So there is that factor into it. But what's been very interesting is, over the last few weeks, in the races that we've been doing, in one of them in particular, he was struggling quite a lot on his wheel. So halfway through the race, he pitted and swapped over to his controller. Within 2 or 3 laps, he put the fastest lap in, and he came out with the words of, "You know what, guys, I take it back. I totally get what you mean now about a controller having more traction than a wheel." And I probably shouldn't say it, but I actually put a massive smile on my face, because then it was that realization for other people that it wasn't just me making it up. I mean, I did comparison videos and all this kind of stuff, and it wasn't just me making it up. Someone that was a pad user gone to a wheel and gone back to a pad, and realizing the difference in traction that they were getting was so noticeable that they saw it straight away. But there we go. I mean, for Codemaster's sake, I hope we don't have a similar thing on the next game, especially when it comes to the wet weather, because that was just ridiculous on F1. And I mean, to be honest, for me, Codemaster's F1 games had some of the best looking wet effects I'd seen on computer games. I mean, Gran Turismo's rain is a waste of time. I mean, a lot of the time as well, you can go faster on slicks in the wet than you can on wet tyres in the wet, which is just ridiculous. I mean, I do think with the Codemasters games that getting your tyre slightly wrong, the effect it would have on your car was a little bit overpowered. I mean, if the track wanted inters and you went onto wets, then it'd be like you was on slits on an absolutely soaked track, which for me didn't really kind of feel right. Okay, yes, you're perhaps not going to go as fast as someone that's on the inters, but to be 10 seconds a lap slower seemed a bit extreme. Actually, it was more than that. I mean, there was one race where, I'm trying to think, it was Brazil, the fun race was doing, where it was wet, or it started raining halfway through, and I opted to go for wet tyres instead of pitting for inters and pitting again for wets later. Those that pitted for inters came out of the pits about 15 seconds behind me. Within 2 laps, I was a lap down. So that was the level of difference. Also, I mean, the traction difference for the controller on F1 was more in the wet, that a pad user could use intermediate tyres when really it needs full wets and still go faster and have more traction than a very good wheel user on the right tyre. But there we go. Okay, regarding this replay, once I get ahead of these cars and finish this lap, I'm going to exit the replay because we don't see any other cars until the end of the race. And I have waffled on quite a bit, so we'll go and do another drive. I'm either going to pick another class of cars and do another race here, or perhaps go and race somewhere else. I may even pick these class of cars again but race somewhere else. I haven't quite decided. We'll have to wait and see what I go and choose.